Olá, 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 contatados e contatadas. Eu sou Eduardo Oliveira, mas pode me chamar de Edu. Mais um episódio especial de O Contato Podcast Internacional. Legendas aqui na descrição e bom programa para vocês. A gente segue em inglês. Hello everyone, welcome to our special international episode. In fact, a very special episode because it is our second anniversary. Yes, O Contato is celebrating 2 years of podcasting, and in order to celebrate it properly, we have 2 international guests. That's right, 2 guests in the same episode. The first is Tom Vernon. We have talked about him in previous episodes, and we've been on his channel, Tom Vernon UAP, talking about important Brazilian cases. Tom is also known for the UAP Files podcast. He's not there anymore, but he's been there quite some time, and he became famous with it. And on his channel, you can find in-depth analysis of UFO cases with very special guests as well. He is very vocal in the UAP international community, and he always have very interesting people on his show to talk about these topics. And the second guest is Jeff Nuccetelli, the former USAF officer who was involved in the Vandenberg Base sighting. You may know him from his participation in the Congress hearings, and he will be speaking with us today. He is a former military police officer with 16 years of active duty service in the Air Force, the United States Air Force. He gained public attention for his testimony regarding the UAP cases, especially the UAP incursions in 2003 in Vandenberg, including the Red Square incident where he and other military personnel saw this strange-looking object. And we talked about several interesting aspects of the phenomena. We shared our own experiences about it. Obviously, we wanna let our guests talk more than we do, but we hope we can extend this chat to other episodes, as you'll see during our chat. Well, enough of me only. Let's get to the conversation. I hope you like. Have a good show, everyone. All right, everyone. So we are going to begin with our special guests, very special guests. In fact, today we have a double dose of international, the contact for you, O Contato Internacional, double dosed. Let me call Gustavo so he will introduce you to our guests. Gustavo, please.
Hello, my friends. We are here again. And it's my pleasure and honor to bring to this conversation our little brother from the UK, Mr. Tom Vernon. Hello, Tom.
Brilliant. Hey, everyone. Fantastic to be here. Thanks for the kind invite. It's great to be here again. You guys are a constant inspiration to me. So thanks for inviting me to the show.
You are already a part-time member of this podcast, my friend. And this is I don't know if this is a good news for you, but we will see in the future. And and the next guest is we were looking forward to talk to him. I annoyed Tom a lot on this last weeks about this. And I have to say thank you, Tom, for setting this up, for setting this interview, this talk. I want to bring to the screen to all of you, Mr. Jeff Nuccetelli.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Mr. Jeff.
Hi. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to meet you guys finally.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, for your time to talking to us, to our audience here in Brazil. I'm sure they will enjoy a lot this conversation. And we are now the first Brazilian channel or podcast to talk with someone who actually been in the hearings. This is the first time a whistleblower, American whistleblower, is talking to a Brazilian channel. So it's pretty groundbreaking for Brazil. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much. It's historic.
Yeah,
So, yeah, let's do it.
you're making history once again.
Right on.
Okay, before we begin with our round of questions and our chat that our audience is already familiar with, let me just point out to Tom that you should be very careful because this is how it begins. Okay, they invite you once, you let them into your channel, you talk to them, you make some sort of double episode with them, and then when you see it, you are an official member of the podcasts, and you have appointments, you have meetings, you have to write stuff that you're not really familiar with, so you're gonna have to research a lot, and that's what happened for me. Okay, when O Contato began, I wasn't.
Eduardo had a life before.
Yes, I had my own. In fact, I was trying to have my own podcast before, and I can't try it anymore because it consumes all the rest of my life. Anyway, so this is how it begins. So you should be careful, and it's the same for Jeff. Okay, so if we ever invite you again, be careful because people who get invited again, they usually come for the third time and for the fourth time, and then when you see it's too late. Okay, so it's the first time an American whistleblower talks to Brazilian media. So this is huge for us, not just for the whole media thing, but also for our interest. We are extremely interested in what is going on. We follow the news about it, and we follow the tweets of all these guys. So this is super important for us. It really means a lot, and because our podcast is also following the Brazilian disclosure. I'm gonna put quote marks there because it's not really a disclosure in a sense that we see, at least publicly in the US. But we are talking constantly to the Brazilian UAP/UFO researchers and politicians who are trying to disclose the Brazilian Air Force files regarding UAPs. We have some sort of disclosure here. The Air Force releases some documents yearly, but we also have signs that that's not everything they have. So that's something we're the Brazilian UAP community is working on, and we follow that pretty close.
And we have these files only for the Air Force. The Army and the Navy, they never talk about it.
Yes, but that's something we can explore during our chat. In order to start off, Jeff, I'd like to begin with you. Could you tell very briefly to our audience who has never heard of you for some reason, which is not possible because we have talked about you recently, but could you give them a little bit about your background, your career in the U.S. military, and how you first became involved with this whole UAP issue, please?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm a prior Air Force veteran. I was a military police officer. I spent 16 years on active duty. Primarily, my job, Air Force police have a number of different important missions they do. So we're in charge of all the security for the base and all of our assets, including nuclear weapons. So we guard the nuclear stockpile and alert aircraft that are loaded with nuclear weapons. So we're responsible for that. It's a very serious job. And then I also was involved in law enforcement. And then after my military career, I went back into federal service with the U.S. Marshal Service. They're the law enforcement branch of the federal government. I had an administrative leadership position with the Marshals. And later, I went into other agencies in the federal government. But I got involved with UFOs in a very real way. Really, back in 1994 timeframe was the first incident where I saw an anomalous flying object while in the military. And that had happened in Japan, 1994, around a site called the Third Space Tracking Site in Misawa, Japan, in northern Japan. And two other police officers and we were on duty guarding this facility, and we saw a small, like basketball-sized blue orb just like appeared low to the ground in front of us, and then it arced through the air and vanished right before it hit the ground. And we all saw it very clearly, and then I called it in over the radio, and that triggered an armed response and a very small investigation. We could never figure out what it was. We thought maybe it was ball lightning or some kind of atmospheric effect. So that kind of began my journey. And then throughout my military career, I would hear many credible reports of things like UFOs at different military bases all over the world. So I would, my friends would tell me that they saw UFOs in Japan and in Korea and in the US and in Europe. And over my career, these stories just piled up, all very credible people. And then in 2003, when I was at Vandenberg, I witnessed the Vandenberg incursions that happened throughout the entire month of October in 2003, and then sporadically for months and years after that. And eventually, I saw my own UFO with other witnesses at Vandenberg Air Force Base. So that's kind of a brief synopsis of my career and how I got involved. And the important thing was I kept official Air Force records of the incursions at Vandenberg. I made copies of the paperwork when these incidents occurred. And luckily, I still had some of that information, and I was able to provide that documentation to Congress, the Senate, the FBI, and Aero, so that they could begin looking into those incursions. And that's initially how I got involved with the federal government just before the first hearing with David Grush, Ryan Graves, and David Fravor. And so I'd already been dealing with the government before the hearing. I was hoping to be included in that first hearing, but it didn't happen. But my case was discussed in the hearing. So I got to be there kind of in spirit and not in person. And since that time, I've been involved, really heavily behind the scenes in disclosure and helping other witnesses come out and things like that.
Okay, Tom, you are not after the hearing, but a little before that, you were working with Jeff on his podcast, yeah, and now you have a close friendship, a professional relationship also, and you are following his path, his journey recently. What can you tell us about this experience of practically being working with Jeff and with this subject? You are a researcher, also a podcast, and you do your own research. How is this helping you in your work?
Well, that's a great question. It's extremely strange, and I'm extremely grateful, and I've got no idea, is the quick answer. So basically, I mean, I went from a perfectly normal life 5 years ago to seeing something in the sky, and then have made an extraordinary amount of connections through synchronicities with extraordinary people. And we interviewed Jeff first on the UAP Files podcast when I was co-host on that. And then just through another chance conversation, I found out that Jeff had a near-death experience. So I was doing a series on that on my channel. So I had him to interview on that, and we just became best pals. So, and then all of a sudden he gets told that he's testifying to Congress. So it's just been like, you know, falling down the stairs. I mean, I don't know what's happening, but it's great. And it's great seeing my friend get to be on the biggest stage in the world for this. And I'm sort of side stage watching it all go on, and I couldn't be more excited. So it's great, man. I mean, we have fantastic discussions about the phenomena and different aspects of it all the time. And Jeff's coming out here to Spain to do some CE5 with me at the end of the month. So we'll hopefully get lots of pictures and send them to you first.
Thank you very much. Every time we do an interview, we write a script before, and we put some questions there. But I know that if we can get to 25% of those questions, it's good enough, because during the conversation, new questions arrive. You talked that about near-death experience about Jeff. You were researching this topic, and now I know this isn't the center of this session, this conversation, but I'm bloody curious. Jeff, can you talk about it, this near-death experience?
Yeah. So I guess how Tom and I got onto this track, I had I believe I introduced Tom to my good friend Scott Guerin. Scott is another Air Force veteran. He's actually this legendary Air Force Special Forces guy that I met a long time ago, and him and I are good friends. And Scott had a UAP encounter in 2018. And he had multiple encounters like throughout his life, but in 2018 he had a broad daylight encounter in Miami or somewhere in Florida, and he was able to get it on video, and he got really good high quality pictures. And Tom had interviewed Scott about that case, and Scott is famous because he survived a 3,000-foot parachute accident while he was in the military. He fell 3,000 feet without a parachute and basically broke every bone in his body, but he survived the fall. And then he recovered and went back on active duty and just kept soldiering on. So Tom had interviewed Scott, and Scott told him about his near-death experience. And it came up in a conversation. I believe Scott and I and Tom were all talking, and I had mentioned that I had one. And that sort of drew a connection to Tom, like, okay, we've got military UFO experiencers, and there might be a pattern between UAP and near-death experiences. So what happened to me, I was a little boy. I was like probably 7 or 8 years old. Me and my sister were playing in the house, and I ran and went through our front door, which was glass, and the door didn't open, and I shattered it, and I went through it, and I just cut myself. Wow. Like, I don't know if you can see it here, but the scar runs all the way down my arm and then up.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was mortal. Dude, it was a mortal wound. And it got me both arms, and so I was, bleeding out. And it's a long story, but I survived only because all these synchronicities kept occurring as they were trying to get me to the hospital. Just everything that had to happen for me to survive happened. We kept running into the right people at the right time. And just as they got me to the hospital, my heart stopped. I bled to death. But on the way, I was in the car. My father was driving. I was sitting on my mother's lap, and we were going through terrifying traffic. It was rush hour traffic. They only had minutes to get me to the hospital. So my dad was driving like James Bond. He was going down one-way streets. He was driving down the wrong side of the highway. So it was just like terrifying. I was like in a James Bond chase scene. And I got so afraid of the car ride that I thought, I can't do this anymore. And when I had that thought, a voice came into my head. Everything got very calm and very quiet, and I felt very peaceful. And I said, this is too scary. I don't want to do this anymore. And the voice said, you can go or you can stay. Either way, everything will be okay. And
Wow.
when it said that, it felt real. It felt true. It felt 100% like trustworthy. And I calmed down and I thought about it for a moment. And I said, well, if that's true, then I'll stay. And then I sort of just popped back into reality, and all the fear was gone, and I felt calm. And then I just remembered the rest of the drive being calm on my mother's lap. And then, I got to the hospital. Then I lost consciousness. And so, yeah, I survived and recovered pretty quick. And that was it. It was just this brief moment, but it was a very like powerful and real, concrete experience. Like there was no doubt that wasn't happening. So
Incredible.
So yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely a connection, because I interviewed 10 different people that I'd got in contact with through things like Reddit on a near-death experience site. So no mention of UFOs. And from 10 interviews, 8 of the people that I spoke to said, and then a couple of months later, I saw a flying saucer or a ball of light. And I was the more it happened, I was like, what? I thought this might be a trend, but it was 80% of the people that I interviewed went on to have really profound UAP experiences. So, make of that what you will.
Right. And so getting back to the UAP thing, Jeff, you mentioned your Vandenberg base incident. That was the moment that was like the peak for you regarding the whole UAP thing. I would like you to tell us a little bit more about that. One of the most discussed parts of this whole UAP thing is exactly the Vandenberg base incident. And I would like you to walk us through what happened through your eyes. What was your perspective there, and how did that influence the things that happened later?
Yeah, so it began October 14th, 2003. I showed up to work. So the Air Force military police units, we operate, it's like a platoon. It's about 60 to 100 people on each platoon, but we call them a flight. And so I was the senior law enforcement patrolman assigned to Bravo flight. We have like 4 flights, Alpha through Delta, and I was on Bravo flight. We worked night shift. So we worked 12-hour shifts. So I would come in about 5 p.m. in the evening, and then I'd work until, 7, 8 in the morning the next day. So I came in to do a changeover with the off-going flight. Delta flight had been working the day shift. And so I came in early to change over with their leadership. So when I pulled into work, there was a crowd of people hanging around our smoking area. And when I drove by, they all started to point at me, and they're like, "Oh my God, there's Jeff." And I could tell that they had something really like cool to tell me. So I parked my truck, I walk over, and just everybody starts to tell me all at once that they had this real world UFO event that morning. And at first I'm thinking maybe they're joking me or something like that. But very quickly, I realized they are not joking. And they're like, dude, you need to go to the command center and hear the whole thing. So I walk over to the command center and I meet with the offgoing leadership, their flight chief and flight sergeant, and their controller, their dispatcher that runs our command center. And they tell me what happened was around 8 o'clock in the morning, 3 Boeing contractors were working on a missile defense launch pad. And they were doing maintenance on it. And one of the contractors walked outside from the hangar, and there was a gigantic 100-yard glowing red square just hovering at low altitude right over top of them. And this guy, looks up at this thing in disbelief, watches it for a little bit, then he runs in, he gets his buddies, and they come out and they're all viewing this object. And then they get on the phone and they report it to their command center. And then that starts a whole series of events, an investigation. So the command center, they call the radar station, the weather station, and everybody on base to find out what is going on. They can't identify anything. There's nothing on radar. We have no aircraft inbound or outbound. There are no weather balloons in the air or equipment in the air. So they know this is totally anomalous. And then at some point they called the police and notified us. And that's how my friends got involved. And they had actually responded out there and met with the contractors. And at some point, the contractor said that the object, this big glowing square, floated further onto the base, and they lost sight of it when it went over a hill. So it came further onto the base, and then they couldn't see it. So my friends go out there, they get the story, and they don't see anything themselves. The object is gone. And then they have these people write statements, and they generate a report. And then they notified the entire chain of command of the base. They notified everybody. So that's what happened that morning. And then I come on duty and I'm told that story. And, I'm actually reading all the statements when they're talking to me. I have access to all the paperwork, the report, everything. And I can't believe it's actually real, but it is real. And so I'm, excited out of my mind because growing up as a kid, my grandmother would tell me stories about when my grandfather and her saw a UFO. They saw a UFO land in Pennsylvania in like 1968. And that was a Project Blue Book case. It was a famous UFO landing in the U.S. It's called the Presque Isle landing. And another big case, it had multiple witnesses, and the FBI was involved. So my grandmother used to tell me that story when I was a kid. And then my father also saw a UFO when he was a teenager. Another famous case, the Kecksburg fireball that thousands of people saw. And that object landed about 40 miles from where I grew up. So my dad and his friends saw that object crash in Kecksburg. But that was the only thing he ever saw. And then all the stories came later, about the Army coming in and recovering a craft and all of that. So I had grown up hearing these stories from my family, who are all credible, very credible people. Like my father was a coal miner, and he basically ran the coal mine. And everybody in my town where I grew up, everybody in the region knew my father. So it wasn't like anybody thought he would be telling wild tales, So I grew up hearing all that, and now I'm at Vandenberg, and it's happening. Like people are saying there are real UFOs coming to the base. So, I'm excited out of my mind. And me and my buddies went out that night looking for UFOs. And one showed up around 1 o'clock in the morning. my good friend Chaz, and 4 other people, had another gigantic building-sized square or rectangular object fly in from over the ocean and hover right over their post at another missile launch pad. And it scared the living hell out of them. They didn't know what it was. It was, terrifying. And then it just flew off at impossible speed and vanished. And I actually responded to that. I was driving to that location as it was happening. And then I conducted, the preliminary investigation. I talked to everybody. And it was like we were living in a movie. I drive out there and my friends are telling me there was a building-sized UFO hovering right over top of them. And I know they are not lying, and multiple people from all over that region were calling it in. So a lot of people saw that. And that just kept playing out over the course of October. Most of the events are not known publicly. We're trying to put information and data together to bring more stories out. But that entire month of October, we were swarmed by UFOs at Vandenberg. And that pattern continued more sporadically over the next few years. They just kept showing up, out of the blue. So that's kind of a short, I don't want to take up too much time, but that's kind of how it started to unroll in 2003.
Great, Jeff. We covered the audience last month, and I found perfect that you were the first to talk, because this story is incredible. You are a military talking about this on that event, so I think it was perfect that you were the first to talk. Talking about the hearing, let's talk about I want to know about the road to the congressional hearing and this recent hearing. It felt like the climax of a long journey. Yeah,
it sure was.
But I'm sure it was the hearing that we saw on the screen. It was just the tip of the iceberg. So I want to know, what was the process like from the first reports and testimonies you were involved in up to finally reaching that public moment before Congress?
Yeah, it has been a really wild journey. I got involved in, I guess, early 2023. And initially I had reached out to Ryan Graves, who testified in the first hearing, and his organization. And him and I talked, and then we established, some trust. And after I got to know Ryan and trust him, I provided some of the documentation to him, redacted, with a lot of the information redacted. And he checked, they vetted my military record and things, and then they introduced me to Congress. So the first interaction I had really with the government, I gave a mass briefing to Congress. I don't know how many people were on the call, but it was a lot of people. So Congress and their staffers. And that was an interesting briefing because I wasn't the only witness that was briefing Congress at that time. There were other people that had other information about UAP events that I still don't think they are public. So all of us briefed Congress and got them interested and provided them with real evidence that we are not just telling stories. And then that led me to Aero and later with the FBI and their investigation. But leading up to that first hearing, I really wanted an opportunity to be part of it. But things were moving very rapidly for that first hearing. So it just didn't pan out. So the first hearing happened. I was so happy that my case had been mentioned in it, and it had been put in the record, in a historical record, and made the public aware of it. And what I was hoping was that would inspire other veterans to come forward with more stories, and people at Vandenberg to come and, back me up and be like, yeah, we know that happened, and things like that. And part of that did happen. I've been coordinating with people behind the scenes that have come forward with additional information. But then, things with the hearings got very complicated because there are many different factions in the U.S. that want to have their witnesses, given an opportunity to testify. So it gets very political and it gets very competitive. And I basically stayed out of all that for the last couple of years, and just worked on my own thing, trying to get old cases brought to light, new witnesses out, things like that, and support the whistleblowers behind the scene. So moving up to this last hearing, it happened really quickly, man. I mean, like maybe 3 weeks or 2 weeks before the hearing, I finally got a call. I knew that my name had been bounced around in Congress for quite some time, and they were looking for, very reliable people with some evidence that could come out and sort of reset the playing field for the disclosure movement. We knew behind the scenes, the people that the public wants to hear from are forced to remain secret because they're not safe to come out, even to talk to Congress. So that's what we were trying to do in the hearing. We wanted to come out strong and let the public and Congress know that there are people waiting to come out and tell the truth, but they cannot do that until we can make it safe for them to do so, because the retaliation that they, go through after they try to talk to Congress or the FBI, a lot of times they're retaliated against. So we have to make them safe long term before they're ever going to come out and talk about crash recoveries or bodies or what's really going on. So that was the intent of the hearing. And, some of the things that came out in the hearing, I don't think have quite settled into the public discourse yet. And here's what I'm kind of talking about. So my friend Dylan Borland that came out during the hearing. I apologize. I've got some kind of big machine outside my window making racket. But so do you want to stop there for a moment, or will I let this thing go
we could just go on. We
Okay.
could just go on.
Don't worry.
So here's what the intent was. David Grush opened the door with the first hearing and disclosed about these secret programs and everything. So David Grush kicked the door open. Standing behind the door was my friend Dylan Borland. And standing behind Dylan Borland is an army of people that would love to come out and tell the truth about what's really going on with UAP. But in order for that to happen, we need to make it safe. So Dylan is part of a group of whistleblowers that all had at some point been exposed to the phenomenon or UFOs, and at some point had tried to get that information either to Congress or the FBI or another investigative body, or they just simply acknowledged that they had seen these objects. And then they were retaliated against for simply speaking about what they saw or trying to report to Congress, right? So these people had their lives destroyed, their careers destroyed. They're being threatened, intimidated, harassed constantly, all simply because they were exposed to UFOs or UFO-related programs and tried to talk about them. So what happened was there was a point in time a few years ago where those individuals were quite certain that they were going to be killed because of this. They were trying to disclose. So what happened was Dylan activated basically what's called a dead man switch. And he was the sacrificial lamb and said, okay, they're going to kill some of us. I'm going to Congress to try to prevent that, knowing full well that he would be targeted for doing that. So Dylan went and reported to Congress and then later to all these different agencies. And luckily that did prevent anyone from being killed, but it also put a big target on Dylan. So he's still living in the after effect of that. And that's what he was testifying to. That if anybody tries to speak the truth about the phenomenon, their lives will be destroyed, their families will be destroyed, their health will be destroyed, their ability to make a living will be destroyed, and they will be punished or possibly killed. And that's what we're fighting about. That's what the hearing was about, to let the public know that people like Dylan are real, they're out there, they're not lying, they've got evidence of not only the UFO, UAP, but also of the retaliation, that this is all very real. And real disclosure will never come until the government can provide a safe playing field for these people to come out and speak. So, that was what the hearing was. And it was very stressful leading up to it. All of us are under intense surveillance and under intense pressure. Some of us were harassed and, they attempted to intimidate some of us and things like that before the hearing. But that's the fight we're in.
I was just gonna ask you to comment on the fear of retaliation that whistleblowers may feel, and how this decision of coming forward and speaking about it, or at least trying to speak about it, whether in public or in Congress, how that decision affect their lives in terms of their safety, sometimes even the relationship with their families, with their friends, and this kind of thing. So yes, there is retaliation. There is an intent of other forces to keep their mouths shut. There is an intent to keep the secret. So even now, with the public movement in Congress, or in some sectors of the how can I call it, some sectors of society, sometimes to try to speak freely about this, there is still retaliation. There is still an intent to keep the secret through pressure, putting pressure on people so they won't talk. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Tom, could you comment on how this pressure, how this intent to keep the secret, not necessarily publicly, keep the secret through actions that are not public, you know what I mean? Trying to do things behind the scenes to discourage people to talk. Could you comment on how that may affect the overall disclosure thing, and if you know any other cases of that?
The thing is, you have to, and I've ranted about this for ages, you have to decide what that red line for disclosure actually means, because it's different for everybody. And there is enough historical data out there to satisfy anybody's need to prove this is real. So that conversation is gone. What this is, as Jeff put very eloquently, far more important is that the people that are brave enough to come forward with their accounts of the unusual are under direct physical threat. I mean, we talk about the stigma affecting people if you just go out in the street and say, hey, I'm interested in flying saucers. That's nothing. There appears to be the danger of professional, physical, mental attack, often from the very institutions that you're trying to ask for help from. And that shows an underlying, far deeper problem than just understanding the phenomena itself. Before you could replace frankly, the UAP doesn't even need to be part of this conversation. We're talking about the institutions that we're supposed to have good faith to at least hear the stories of whistleblowers persecuting people. And this has gone, you can go back to James Forrestal. There's people, you could fill books with people that have fallen victim to very dangerous consequences of their actions. And until we are in a situation where honest, integral people that have just witnessed something far beyond their comprehension can report it openly and freely, we are completely strangling the issue, and we'll never understand it outside of the very small corridors of power. Plus, and more importantly, it's a human injustice. If people, not just civilians, but if people like Jeff and his colleagues and the other whistleblowers, I mean, you've got an active duty naval personnel there. You've got Dylan was a contractor for BAE Systems, formerly British Aerospace, and all of these people are in danger. And we've got these institutions like Arrow, which is supposed to be a good faith organization for investigating the unknown. And yet, that if you were to set up an organization to stifle the data and funnel it into one place and keep things quiet, then that would be the perfect institution to do it. And so the more curtains we lift back, the more skeletons and very scary things there are behind it. And there are people at risk, so it becomes more of a human issue than even a scientific or esoteric issue.
On my first book, which we released this month, I talked about how the CIA used the narrative and molded the narrative about UFOs in the 20th to the 21st century. And I like to keep track on the numbers on the media. And I was doing a research. I found many streams of the hearing on the internet, on big channels, and I was looking the numbers of views and comparing to the other numbers from the same channel. And I saw something interesting, like on the YouTube channel of Reuters, they streamed the hearing live, and it had the biggest number of views for the last 4 months before the hearing. So basically, for a live video on Reuters channel on YouTube to have the same number, it took 4 months. So now we can see that there's a public interest in the subject. I found very similar numbers on many other channels on YouTube, and this is something that I think speaks a lot about how the public is interested about this. But at the same time, I did a research about what was happening in the world at that day. And there was a lot of things happening. There was a attempt of coup d'etat in Nepal, and there were things in Gaza and Israel. So there's a lot of competition for the attention of the audience. And I think the hearing did it well. It had very good numbers on media, at least on not only on alternative media, but on mainstream media, at least on the internet. But
even
Jeff,
physically, I mean, just physical bums on seats. I mean, how many people turn up to a political hearing about stuff, no
Yeah.
matter how important it is. And yet both, look at the one with David Grush or the one with Jeff and everybody. It was like the Super Bowl. There's people queuing around the block like they're going to see Led Zeppelin or something, and it was for a political event. So that shows that regardless of how silly we're told by the media this topic is, that people care, and not just people that have experienced it themselves.
Yeah, Jeff practically he went to the UFO World Cup.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's basically that the UFO Olympics
Yep.
is that big a deal. But let me ask you something. In the past year, we've seen several reports of mysterious drone swarms. First over New Jersey, was not only in New Jersey, I know, but it became most known about New Jersey, and more recently across parts of Europe. And I want to know, Jeff, what's your take on these incidents? Do you see any possible connection between these events and what you've personally experienced or learned during your time investigating UAP? What's your take on these drones, swarms? Because when I investigating the Brazilian cases from the 20th to until now, we have a specific date. Oh, so here is where it started in Brazil. But no, you can go backwards and see that things were happening in the 19th century. And these drones events, we are talking about New Jersey and in Europe now, but these things are happening for a long time.
Yeah. So I actually lived through the New Jersey drone incursion. I had them flying over my house, 200 feet over me, almost every night. They were not drones. They are UAP until proven otherwise, because they're anomalous in nature. No noise. Like I said, I had these objects 200 feet over my house. No noise. You cannot resolve them with your eyeballs. Even at close range, you can't see it quite clearly. It's very like blurry and indistinct. You can see the lights flashing, but you can't make out the actual object. And the way they move is bizarre. So yeah, I'm convinced that these are not drones. Now, there could be drones mixed in to what I consider a UAP flap. And I've got some data that supports that there are government, maybe non-state actors using this phenomenon to interject their technology and do whatever they're doing. But the majority of the drones that I saw in New Jersey, they look like UAP. And we would see up to 30 or more at a time. Some of them were larger than helicopters. Some of them were small. But I talked to Tom about this. I had a thought when I was watching the drones one night in New Jersey. We were watching them just circle over Manhattan in New York, and they would come over my house and just all night for like hours. And they appeared to me like almost like they were birds or insects that were like migrating or fluttering or interacting, like biological. And that thought came to me because I had seen a lot of imagery from objects going in and out of the water, UAP, that when you enhance those images, they look biological. They look like creepy, weird biological things in almost like an egg or something. So very bizarre, biological looking objects coming in and out of the water. And I thought, well, maybe that's exactly what they are. There's something natural that evolved into the deep oceans. It's been here forever. And they come up out of the water and then they migrate to different parts of the planet and mate or do whatever they're doing, right? So that's sort of just a loose working theory I have, because there is a pattern I think 3 years leading up to New Jersey, we had the same type of incursions out in the Midwest in the U.S., over in Colorado, I think in Wyoming, Nebraska. So it is a pattern, a reoccurring pattern. And now it's playing out in Europe. And I think it's the same objects or the same types of objects. And I don't believe they're drones. I don't think they're man-made. Some of them might be, but the majority, I believe, they're UAP. And until someone can show me an image of a drone flying over Europe, then they're UAP by definition. They're unknown, unexplained aerial phenomenon. So that's my kind of short take. I think these drone incursions will continue. The pattern will continue.
Do you see some specific knowledge from the fact that they appear in strategic locations, like locations with nuclear technology or energy facilities? Does it sound like something that an adversary nation would do, or that some sort of I don't know, reconnaissance mission from an adversary nation, or I don't know, the places where they show up, do they tell you something about what they could be, or simply the fact that you can't make out what the object really is by looking at them, what they are by looking at them? Is it strange enough, or do the locations have something to do with it?
That's where things get so murky, right? There are patterns, like for example, with the nuclear facilities and high tech. Like we know that's a pattern. They show up at nuke sites and things like that. But they also show up to people's farm, or while people are camping. And the same is true with these drone incursions. If you look at some of the information that came out about the ones that happened in previous years before New Jersey, they were over farms and just over people's animals and their crops. And they have no idea why. And they were also out in the Midwest. They were the drones or UAP were following like the roadways. And the police were chasing them. And so and then again with the New Jersey drones, I mean, they were over residential areas, and also at Picatinny Arsenal, which matches the pattern. But I can't determine any kind of pattern, and kind of where my thoughts are falling into now is that the data can't help. The data is sort of a dead end. Like we could get all the videos and radar information and speeds and geographic locations and time and date and everything. But I don't know if that data, even if we had all of it and used like artificial intelligence, I don't know if it'll show us any truth or give us any insight about what they are or what they're doing. So I'm perplexed.
Okay, so let me get it over to Tom. So if we consider that these UAPs, they show up almost everywhere, some of them have interests to specific locations, sometimes even to specific kinds of people, because there is that idea that there are personal characteristics on the witnesses that attach them to different kinds of UAP phenomena. How can we fit that in trying to make an overall view of this phenomenon? I mean, after you've been years into this as well, and after what you have read and seen, the people you have spoken to, how do you think we can build an image, an overall image of what it is today? How can we make a big picture? How can we use that to make a big picture? Do you believe we're dealing with some sort of technological mystery, or is it a security issue? Is this man-made, and there is some super advanced technology made by some nation that we don't know of, or is that something that goes beyond that, something that really defies our understanding, and we are all of us, even the secret government programs, even they are light years away from knowing what this is?
Well, I could answer that over the course of about 6 weeks, but okay. So basically, I think to slim it all down, imagine 400 years ago, before we had microscopes, things were happening to us, and we had to explain it in the frame of reference that we had at the time. So we would say, evil spirits have made this person ill. I'll pray over the bed, and I'll wash their face and everything, and then they would get better. Then we discover the microscope, and we discover that where there's an entirely new system and scale of life that we had no idea about before. And frankly, I think that we are at that point now where, as we're getting things like night vision goggles and LiDAR and scalar waves and all of these fantastic extra artificial senses, we are seeing the signature of life forms that we have no reference for. And when you look back through our history at things like the jinn and the fairies, things that follow through these rules of these types of experiences have been interacting with us since before we were us, frankly. Now, I'm going to smash through all of those aspects of the question. If you look at us with things like the Trojan horse and Lockheed Martin making drones that look like mosquitoes, we have a tactical reason to hide our machines as something unusual, as an object of faith or something from the natural world. Look at the Northrop Grumman, the manta ray drone. So an element of this is mechanical, is a magnificent machine. Some of it's probably ours, some of it's probably something else. The universe is infinitely massive, so any mathematician would say something from somewhere else has been here longer than us, and we're a pretty cool thing to check out. If we're we look like a nature reserve in the middle of a big empty car park, so we're worth having a look at. But I think it's something from here which is interacting with us the most, and I think it's so outside of our knowledge of reality. I mean, if you try explaining to somebody that lives in this television screen in front of you that they're inside a living room and there's a pet in the corner and all these three-dimensional things, it's completely inconceivable. So I think the difficult part for us to do is to have the humility to say, we don't know, and we're open to change our mind, because that is the scientific method is brilliant until it breaks completely. And unfortunately, that's the only way that it advances, is when we've got the humility to say, I want to be proven wrong in order to increase my understanding. As you mentioned with these orbs, and Jeff mentioned before, they seem to be, they're not a machine, but we have such a limited understanding of UAP. It's like saying, well, how do birds behave? Well, some of them eat others, some of them will attack people, some of them make a lovely pet, some of them lay eggs, some of them migrate halfway around the world every now and then. How do you summarize human behavior? Some of us are conservationists, some of us are hippies, some of us are psychopaths, and some of us are murderers. So it's an incredibly complex issue. Imagine a fish poking its head out of the water and seeing a bird for the first time. How would that understand it in fish terms? So we have to have the humility to understand that something beyond our comprehension is happening. And the only way we're going to learn about it is by being prepared to relearn everything. the data is there. Frankly, it's a very individual experience. It has a completely destructive effect on your view of the world, as is echoed. I mean, that's a truly human experience. There's people, there's tribes people in the rainforest that have never seen civilization that have their own stories about this. There's indigenous and aboriginal people that have talked about sky people forever, and now we have our modern technology friendly version of it's this little fella in a very advanced spaceship. So we force it into our reality instead of forcing our reality into it.
Great, Tom. Thank you very much, man. We all have busy lives, so I will go close to the end of our conversation because I know Jeff and Tom probably have a lot of things to do after it, and I have to work also. But Jeff, to close our conversation, after everything you've witnessed and studied, what's your overall perspective on the UAP phenomenon today? It's just almost the same question as we did to Tom. He gave his understanding, his opinion about it, his interpretation. Do you believe we're dealing with a purely technological mystery, security issue, or something that goes beyond our current understanding? What's your take on the phenomenon as a whole?
Yeah, again, it's a huge question, right? So I think it's a mix, it's a blend. I think that there are technological craft, and then there are things that are not. So it's not one thing. And along the same kind of lines that Tom was speaking to, so when I look at the modern scientific paradigm, the problem with it is we have discounted all of subjective observation, right? Modern science doesn't put any kind of validity on the human experience, like what we're seeing and feeling and living. So they just want data, and I think that's a big problem. And if you look at the entire corpus of human observation, right, every culture, every religion, throughout the world, through every age, human beings have observed, seeing what you could describe as supernatural phenomena, whether it's a burning bush or a light in the sky or a ghost or an apparition. Human beings see things in the real world that are not supposed to exist. And then they have to try to integrate that information back into their regular waking life. And that's the pattern of human history. We're going about our day, whether it's 50,000 years ago or last week, and you're gathering food or chopping wood, and you look up and there's something in the sky, or something coming out of the water, or something completely mysterious, right?
Or something out of the woods.
Right. And we observe that. And other people observe it with us, and then you're left with a mystery. And all that mystery has been chronicled in all of human endeavor, right? That's what all of our literature going back into antiquity is talking about. Strange, mysterious things happening around humans. And I think it's a flaw in the modern scientific paradigm to throw out the observation of what people are seeing and rely on data. And that's exactly what the debunkers do. They say, well, that's probably, the US Navy doesn't know how to use their radar, or the equipment malfunctioned. It's not really a tic-tac. It's just a bird. And you can make that case with data as long as you discount all of the witness testimony, right? The pilot saying, look at them, man, there's a whole fleet. They're moving 120, knots against the wind. So if you remove the human element, then you could tell whatever story with the data you want. That's probably a bird or a balloon. And that's what's happening. And we have to find a way to integrate the subjective and objective realities into our scientific methodology. You cannot just say people, don't matter, because we would have no science without humans observing nature and documenting. So until we figure out a way to incorporate the subjective human experience, like what we're feeling and seeing, and into the scientific data model, I don't know that we're going to get any answers from science, because we're dealing with the mystery of reality itself. Like, what is reality? And how is it constituted? And what is it made out of? And how does energy interact? So I think we need a new way of thinking. And I think we're kind of on the verge of that now.
It's a great time to be alive.
It is.
Yes.
It is. I think what we're seeing are all of our ancient traditions and beliefs crashing headlong into science. And they have to blend some way, because they're both correct. You can't just have one. The world is strange and mysterious. So you have to integrate, those two things. And that's happened. I think we're being forced to do that.
So the world is strange and mysterious, and I'm glad that I'm not the only one who feels that way. Let me pull you all to the screen here. How do I do that? Oh, here. Okay. So in order to close our episode, I would like to thank you both for being here today, and you as well, Gustavo. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Eduardo. You're very kind.
Okay, thank you. Vinicius isn't here with us on screen, but he is listening to every word we say. I'm not sure if he's really following the conversation because he's at work, but if you are one of our regular listeners and you have a third member in our show, technically I would be the third member because I joined later. But anyway, so in order to close the episode, I would like to both of you to talk about your projects, your social media. Tom is doing 200 things at the same time, and Jeff is involved in other projects as well. So please, Tom, tell us a little bit about your projects. People who don't know your work, how can we follow you? That's that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And Jeff's podcast also.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, if you want to see documentaries of me rambling about stuff, all wizardy woo stuff and craft and aviation, then I've got my channel on YouTube, which is Tom Vernon UAP. And if you want to see far more sensible and credible people speaking to whistleblowers, then I'm also on Jeff's channel, the Jeff Nuccetelli podcast. So that keeps it nice and simple, and then hopefully I'll be able to annoy you guys on your podcast too in future. So yeah, surely that's enough me for everybody.
Yeah, we have a recording on next Tuesday, so just put it on your agenda.
Okay, and exactly, and Jeff, you have a podcast as well, and you're very active on X, right?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
But I have to say something. You have one of the best signatures or slogans, which is "Reality is classified." I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so that's mainly where I'm on social media. I could give you guys my handle. It's Ice Alchemist 11. So yeah, I'm pretty active on there. I have a Twitter account too, but the podcast is the Jeff Nuccetelli podcast with Tom Vernon. Can't do it without Tom. Tom is the reason the podcast is even a thing. Without Tom, it wouldn't be here. So, but yeah, that's where you can check out our work and more. I'd love to have you guys on the podcast. So we'll have to set that up. I keep hearing all these rumors of a UFO flap in Brazil right now. So I would love to hear, anything you guys are picking up on your radar and have you guys
Okay,
on. So we'll definitely set that up.
we'll be there.
All right.
Yeah. For a final question before we really finish, is it Nuccetelli or Nuccetelli? Please, because I've been saying Nuccetelli with, I've been talking to Gustavo and we're saying Nuccetelli, Nuccetelli.
Well, my name is Cornaccioni.
Yes.
Two C's. So
Yeah. Is that Italian?
yeah,
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
100, practically a gangster.
Yeah. So you're correct. In Italian, it's Nuccetelli, but
Yeah.
we Americanized it somehow, so
Okay.
it turned into Nuccetelli. But either way is correct. Yeah.
Okay,
I'd like to
yeah.
start trying to get back to the Italian roots and going with the Nuccetelli.
Yeah. In our show, we usually call Gustavo Don Guto Coronaccioni. The Godfather from Jaboticabal, which is the name of his city. Anyway, guys,
Yeah,
it's been
but
a lovely.
I discovered that the town where my ancestors from Italy came, in their town there is a small cemetery from the 19th century with tens of cornaccionis buried there, and they were all very young. So I think maybe they did something wrong. I don't know.
Maybe.
And then some, and then one of them came to Brazil, and now I'm here talking about UFOs.
There you go.
Yes.
There you
So yeah, the world is really strange. The world is. I mean, look at that story. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for this lovely chat. I hope we can do this some other time. Tom, we definitely will be on your show whenever you want. Jeff will be on your show whenever you want. But when I will advise you again. When we ask you to be on our show again, please be careful, okay? Because it's probably a trap. That's something Gustavo does to almost everyone, okay? Especially
Eduardo lost weight after he joined us.
I did. That's the good part. I did. But especially when the content that we produce is good, when the chat is interesting, we really
I'll
like to
expect
have
my
people.
uniform in the post. I'll get my little name badge. Can I just say, guys, before we go, that this is so rewarding to have us from 3 different countries talking about this
Yeah.
topic, because
Yeah.
it's such an insular thing and everybody's got their own little legends in their countries. And I think with collaboration like this, we're going to make so much progress. So thank you for having us on.
Yeah. And thank you guys so much for having me. I'm always telling people that the podcasters are the frontline troops in this fight. You guys are doing the research and getting the information out and attracting attention. So thank you so much for having me on and giving me an opportunity, to talk to all your audience. And I really appreciate, the opportunity. So thank you to you and your audience for paying attention and your support. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. We deeply appreciate your time, really. So that's it for today. To our audience, please. Oh yes, that's Tom said we could feel a book with people that were victims of the secret. Yeah, Gustavo did that. Okay, he wrote a book about how CIA kept the secret on UFOs. It's not about
and many things went wrong during the producing of the book. After it was easy to, not easy, but we made it to the crowdfunding. So then we sent it to the printer, and then many things went wrong. So it's a big victory.
Yeah.
I will never use the word CIA on the cover of a book again.
No. Is it going to be in English?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I'll spread the word far and wide.
Thank you very much. And the next one about the Brazilian X-Files from the 70s will be in English too.
Oh, great.
That's the one you want to read, because I don't
Oh,
think
so you
will
don't want
find-
to read this one? Oh, thank you, Eduardo.
I've read it already. Okay. But what I mean is that the Cioni book will be much more interesting because you won't find content in English about it. Okay. At
Yeah.
least not that deep. You can find one or two things. There's an episode in Tom's channel about that we spoke about Cioni, and it's basically Gustavo's initial research for the book. So it's
Yeah,
really
because
interesting.
this book, the take is different. The point of view is different. Not trying to prove that UFOs are real. My point is, ufology is real. If UFOs are not real, it doesn't matter. Ufology is real,
Yeah.
and the world has to deal with it. So I went through files, documents, and found the way how CIA worked, used this topic. But the next book about CON, so this will be especially from an international audience. Everything there will be new.
Oh,
So
great.
it's a forgotten subject even for Brazilians.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and that's why this is so important. Like we talked about before the call, that history keeps being forgotten. It's all there in plain sight. The Brazilian UFO program that was public, and now people just forgot. And we need to remind them this is nothing new. Yeah. That's
Yeah, one
great.
thing that I find very hard on this area, on this field, is once there is no agreement that UFOs are real, you are deep in your research, and sometimes you have to talk with someone who is on the class UFOs 101.
Yeah.
So we're always having to go back to start talking from the past, and then so the topic doesn't evolve that much as it could be done if we were all on the same page.
I agree, but I'm gonna jump in and argue with you for a second just before we go, just to wreck the call. But it doesn't matter. Like us, we don't need convincing. So every time you go back to somebody that says for the first time, like, okay, tell me about this stuff, like that's the jackpot. We've either seen stuff or are convinced by these testimonies and brave whistleblowers and stuff. But if we can just get reasonable people to ask that first question, that's disclosure. It doesn't need to be the details of this year and this person and this craft and this body. It's just making this a reasonable discussion that we can have, just like we talk about space or science.
Yeah, I had this feeling because one week after the American hearing where Jeff was in, we had a Brazilian hearing in Brazilian Congress, but it was a little different because there were no former militaries there. It was basically researchers, Brazilian ufologists on the Congress with elected members of the Congress there, and the hearing received a lot of critique by some people, and one of them were like, well, they could bring some scientists to talk about it, but that's the point what I'm talking about. The hearing wasn't about proving that UFOs are real, so have a debate on the pros and cons of this opinion, of this idea. It was not about that. It was about the discussion about UFOs in Brazilian airspace and the Brazilian equivalent of FOIA. So every time you try to, at least in Brazil, you try to have this serious conversation about if ufology were a book, you were have a conversation on the chapter 20, but people try to bring you back to chapter 1. Okay, no, we're not talking about that. We're looking forward.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, guys, I think we're all past way past chapter 1, And with that, I will finally try to bring this to a close because even our viewer can't stand us anymore. I'm kidding. I know. You love us. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here all this time. And thank you for being here all the way through the end. Please leave a comment, like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Check the links in the description to our guests' contents as well. And we'll see you next time. Before we go, anyone wants to say anything else before I finish the recording here?
Just
No?
I'm trying to get down to Brazil, so
Oh,
eventually I'm going to get Tom down there too. Eventually we're going to come.
please,
Okay.
please.
Let's have a coffee one day.
Let's do that. But
Yeah.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. See you.